now, and Gina Rinehart's quest to make sure nobody sees a painting of her in the National Gallery of Australia has tonight gone from bad to worse. The story has now gone global, and there's even a new campaign to have it displayed in Times Square.
After turbulence, a Boeing 777 flight out of London, at least one passenger was killed.
The Boeing 777 hit severe turbulence, again killing at least one person, injuring many others.
Ladies and gents, it's Tuesday night. Time of recording. Welcome to episode 279 of Aid Thompson and Other Disappointments. You're twice, sometimes thrice, depending on what's going on in the world. Sometimes we throw out an emergency podcast here and there. Your twice, sometimes thrice weekly delve, nay foray, into the worlds of politics, dystopia, and chaos, despair, and endless awfulness. I'm your host, Aid Thompson, and you'll be in my company for the next 45 minutes to 1 hour, depending on how we go. You know, let's see what stories are going on out there, shall we? As we once again try to make sense of the objectively senseless. How are you guys doing? What's going on? Are you all excited about the in-person meetup? The Patreon meetup? YouTube community members as well? The next in-person meetup, guys, I've got it in the diary. It's Saturday, the 5th of July or the 6th of July. I can't remember what I said now. Whatever it is, it's that weekend. And it's in London. So if you're not a member of the Patreon or the YouTube community thing yet, I always put a description to both. I always put them both in the description of every episode on YouTube, and indeed all of the paper reviews. So if you're enjoying all the stuff that I put out and you want to get involved, you want to come down to London, maybe for a weekend, bring your mates along. We'll have a few beers, probably tequilas, possibly sambucas. I couldn't tell you the last time I had a sambuca. Probably because I just don't remember it, but do people still drink Sambuca? Is that that feels like a staple of the 90s and the noughties, you know? Like Goldschlager. Remember when that all came out? And VK Blue? And Smirnoff Ice? God, these are drinks of yesteryear, aren't they? These are the sort of drinks that you would expect to see served at a Butlins retro weekend, you know? Where it's like one of those weekends in term time where they're never going to get to fill out the caravan park with families and children, you know, the actual people who, the demographic of people that they want to get in. And so begrudgingly, their marketing and strategy guys are like, look, okay, if we want to get bums on seats, if we want to get bodies in caravans for the weekend, you know what we should do, guys? We should book 2 Unlimited and E17 for a Thursday and Friday night and Saturday night special. We should get... And then, oh my God, you know what we should do? We should serve Smirnoff Ice behind the bars and Bacardi Breezers in 2020. Oh, people would love it. And I wish I could say I wouldn't love it and I'm above that, but I actually would. I would thoroughly enjoy myself, I think, for a week. Anyway, look, this is supposed to be sort of political and satirical, isn't it? Why am I showing my age, waxing lyrical about yesteryear? What's going on out there, guys? What is the happy haps today? Let's try and make sense of it once more. Here's a story I found earlier. I don't know if this has bled out into the periphery, the journo-political landscape as yet. Singapore Airlines, 1 dead after severe turbulence forces a flight from London to land in Bangkok. Singapore Airlines says it's working with Thai authorities to provide the necessary medical assistance and sending a team to Bangkok to provide extra help. 1 dead from turbulence. How the fuck do you die from turbulence? You know? What kind of a flight has turbulence so bad that you can die from it? Is that like a heart attack? Like it was so scary that somebody's had a heart attack? Or is it like, is it somebody refused to put their seatbelt on? I hope it was Lawrence Fox. I hope that's how far his contrarianism goes. Guys, yes, I do have a mean heart. I hope that, like, the contrarianism started when people started suggesting to him that white privilege was a thing because he felt attacked by it. You're a white man. Do you understand there might be some privilege that you have enjoyed? Absolutely not. I won't hear of it. It started with that because it was easier for him to be a contrarian about these things than to acknowledge he may have had an easier ride of it than millions of other people. It started there, guys. It's gone on to every other possible type and style of contrarianism, from rejecting masks and rejecting the vaccine, and rejecting rejecting Remainism, for want of a better phrase. And finally, it's ended, no, I'm not wearing a mask. No, I will not get the jab. Finally, it's ended up with, like, I refuse to wear my seatbelt on this plane. I don't care what happens. And then the turbulence comes. That's what I hope. I hope this is what's happened. He sold his house in London. I don't know if you guys saw that. He's like, to hell with London. Because he seems to think that London's gone to the dogs and Islamists have taken over and Sadiq Khan this and speeding ULEZ cameras that. It was that whole thing. He said London's changed. He doesn't recognise it anymore. He's leaving. Though curiously, he has decided to leave at exactly the same time as a succession of court cases have meant that he probably has to sell his house and he can't afford to buy another one in London. But I'm sure it's his decision. It's totally Larry's decision that he's had to sell his house for running his mouth one too many times. Anyway, yeah, I hope that's what this story is. God, that sounds borderline evil, doesn't it? It sounds callous of me. I don't hope that Lawrence Fox has died. I promise you I'm not about that. I do not hope that Lawrence Fox has died. Do I hope and pray that he might experience similar financial struggles to the ones endured by people who deign to suggest that he is a beneficiary of privilege and then he's dismissed all of that? Do I hope and pray and wish that he might suffer a little bit? Yeah, probably. I mean, there's no point lying about it, is there? You know, it's just, it's in there. I do hope that. The heart wants what it wants. Guys, I can't change what my heart desires and yearns for, can I? Anyway, so 1 dead after... Sorry, I went off on a complete rant there, didn't I? Right tangent. Singapore Airlines, 1 dead after severe turbulence. Incredible way to die, isn't it? I think I've spoken about this before on another episode. That one of my greatest fears is dying in a stupid way. You know? Like, it's one thing to die, or to die young, to die tragically. That is a bad thing, or a bad suite of options in terms of how you pass away. But I feel like there's an extra layer of awfulness added if you die in a silly way. You know, if you're changing the aerial on the top of your house, if you died getting yourself off on, you know, I don't know, let's take something really, disturbing, but, we're not going to kink shame on this show either. So let's just say it was a, slightly adventurous way of pleasuring oneself. Let's say you just decided one day, ad hoc, out of nowhere, to see what it feels like to put a cucumber with a condom over it up your rear end, and you're doing that with one hand, and then the other hand's taking care of the front bit, right? And on your phone, while you're doing all that, you are watching a video of, I don't know, an AI deep-faked Richard Madeley in a tutu, just bending over or like dancing provocative. Like, if that's how they found you, right? Cucumber at the rear end, hand wrapped firmly around the front bit, and video repeating on loop of Richard Madeley in a tutu, deep-faked. Probably deep-faked. If that's how they found... Like, it just adds another layer of it's really tragic that Aid died so young and left behind 2 young children. That is sad. That is tragic. But on the other hand, the silver lining, if there were to be a silver lining of Aid Thompson's premature death, it has to be that, I gather by all accounts the guy knew quite a few comedians. And that is an objectively silly way to die. So, look on the bright side. His funeral is going to be like a fucking roast. It's going to be so good. The speeches! Oh, Lord! That is truly my greatest fear. But, on the plus side, hugely unlikely you're going to be around to, to go red-faced at it all, right? You'll be dead. You don't need to worry about that, about what people are going to say about you after you've gone in a silly way. And frankly, Aid, if you're concerned about what people might say about you after you're gone, perhaps you should spend less time talking shit about them now. How about that? Let's keep reading this. I'm fascinated by this. So, Singapore Airlines, 1 dead from severe turbulence. 1 person has died, and others have been injured during severe turbulence on a plane from London to Singapore, with passengers saying people were launched into the ceiling. Singapore Airlines flight SQ321 from Heathrow was forced to make an emergency landing in Bangkok. We can confirm that there are injuries and 1 fatality on board the Boeing 7... Is a Boeing? Are you guys familiar with the Boeing scandal that's been bubbling up over in the US? Hasn't really touched the newspapers here so much. Like, you hear little tidbits of it, but nobody's talking about it here the way that they are in America. But I'll give you a few little, bullet points of the Boeing scandal, if you like. So here's my understanding of it, right? So you've got Boeing, who manufacture and maintain a lot of 747s and 757s. And then you have these sort of supporting third-party maintenance companies who create parts that Boeing then use, right? Sort of a supply chain. And a few engineers and a few sort of quality control people over the years have been warning again and again, this is not ready for sign-off. You can't ship that. These parts are not fit for purpose, etc., etc. And Boeing got themselves into trouble last year, I think, and then one of these whistleblowers stepped forward saying, I've been warning about this stuff since forever, and he was going to testify at a trial against Boeing, and then he was found dead. So, I mean, I'm not laughing because, it's funny that he died. I'm laughing at the obviousness of it, the transparency. That here you have this international conglomerate, And this one little guy is about to take the stand against them and tell everyone what he knows about their substandard quality control processes. And suddenly he ends up dead. Way before his time. And now it's happened again. 45-year-old, I think last month, died after a short illness. Could be natural. Seems very strange that two whistleblowers going up against Boeing have both died relatively soon after one another at relatively young ages. And now this guy. This is the latest. Boeing whistleblower fears for his safety after colleagues' sudden deaths. I'm always looking to make sure nobody's following me. I mean, this is a state of where we're at now. Like, doesn't this feel like something would happen in Russia? Do you remember the days of when, like, people would talk about corporate corruption and murder and oligarchical states and all of that? And people would go, well, yeah, I know, but that's life in Moscow, you know, that's how they play over there. I remember interviewing a guy who told me about some time. I used to work in HR years ago, and I interviewed this guy for a job. And he told me about some time that he spent in Russia. And I asked him, one of the questions I asked him, typical HR question. I said, can you give me an example of a time when you were met with challenging circumstances in your prior role and how you overcame those obstacles? It was like, you know, one of these really insufferable HR-y questions, very broad, you know, just get them talking about their old job, basically. And so this guy takes a deep breath and he tells me that when he was working for a company in their Moscow office, one night they get a phone call and it's this like group of gangsters, and they're basically like, we have control of the power for your office, and we are going to shut it down unless you fill up a couple of duffel bags. Like, it sounds like something out of a movie, doesn't it? Unless you fill up 2 duffel bags full of rubles or, you know, US dollars or whatever, and you leave them at this specific location at this time, do not be followed, leave it there, and blah, blah, blah. And I said, oh my God, like, so what did you do? And I was so like young and naive and just British. And I was like, so did you call the police? And he's like, no. I phoned my director and we filled up 2 duffel bags and then we left them in the location that we were, that they asked. Like, it was a challenging situation, but I overcame the challenges by doing precisely what the gangsters asked me to do. But now, you know, I can't remember if I gave him a job or not. I remember like raising it with my director, saying like, I mean, that's not, you know, do we want to give a job to somebody that is so anyway, I can't remember if I gave him the job, but doesn't that, like, you listen to stories like that and you think, just as my director said to me back in the day, he was like, well, you know, that's how things go over there. You listen to those sorts of stories and you think, yeah, that's Russia. That's what happens in corrupt states like Russia. But then you start reading stories about, like, Boeing. And you're like, oh, I mean, it's not Russian sounding, is it? Suggestions of whistleblowers being found dead when only a couple of weeks before they were like, if somebody offs me, it's not me. I have no plans to kill myself. And then they kill themselves. Like, it's, you know. Anyway, now it turns out that, you know, this death by turbulence, you know, happened on a Boeing, guys. What does that mean? What can we glean from that? I'll tell you what I'm going to glean from it. Or rather, a question that is now leaping to the forefront of my mind is, was the guy who died an Iranian dignitary? Is that what has happened here? Is that... Because, look, I'm just saying, death by turbulence, death by helicopter of the Iranian president. This is a bad week to be taking any sort of flight. I think that's what I'm learning from this. Maybe he's a Boeing whistleblower. Maybe he's an Iranian dignitary. We don't know at this time. Guys, this story very much in development. Let's move on. Okay, so next story. I think you're going to like this one. This is a personal favourite of mine. I'm a lover of art. I think we all know that. And I think art is going through a really rough time at the moment. If we're not savaging it with artificial intelligence and deep fakes and mid-journey AI and, all of these weird and wonderful packages that you can simulate the skill set of an actual artist on. If we're not doing that, then we're dismissing and disparaging the skills of artists by defunding them, not giving them support that they are reliant on. Art itself is a hugely classist endeavour. To become a successful artist, a painter, in 2024, you basically have to be a privately educated Nepo baby, like in the UK. There's no feasible, discernible way to become a successful, known and valued artist unless you've got a very rich mummy and daddy who can, fund your way through living in a squat, dabbing bits of paint around. So there's that. Also, it's ripe for mockery and parody, isn't it? Look at the portrait of King Charles last week. Some guys had to hone and develop his skill set for years, for decades. And he does this thing for the king, no less. What could be a more highly regarded commission than to be asked to paint the King of England? And then it goes out on the internet, and then people like me talk shit about it. Like, draw little memes where it's become the guy, like, who's it? Vigo from Ghostbusters 2. That was my favourite one. It's like Ray from Ghostbusters, like, reaching into the painting that is King Charles, but actually it's Vigo. You understand what I'm saying, right? It's hard to be an artist in the UK in 2024. So, let me draw your attention to this story. Gina Rinehart portrait. Gallery faces growing pressure to remove unflattering painting of billionaire. It's like, and you thought those waxworks of like Wayne Rooney and, the King Charles painting or the statue of Ronaldo or the tattoos of Tommy Robinson on the leg where it looks like his face is like melting. You thought all of that artwork was bad. Well, wait till you see this. Gina Rinehart portrait. Gallery faces growing pressure to remove unflattering painting of billionaire. A billionaire wants to remove an unflattering painting. I mean, this is like, I don't want to, rehash old points or, go through old rants or whatever, because I'm sure I talked a little bit about this. Must have been about like a month or about 6 weeks ago, right? But I mean, the idea that I have in my head, like the dynamic that I think that we have all agreed upon, right, is that if you are a billionaire, I don't know, do any of you have any understanding or concept of how much money that is? For most of us, £20 million would do. That pays off your mortgage. That gives you enough for, cruises, a little investment property. You're comfortable, probably for the rest of your life. For most of us, 20 million would be fine. 50 million, you're actually living pretty good indeed. You've got a London townhouse now. 100 million. Wow. Okay. Now we're talking sports cars, third or fourth homes, cruises every year. You can fund your kids' interests and all that. You can start to donate and get into philanthropy. 100 million. 500 million. Oh, Lord. Opulence. 1,000 million. A billion, right? £1 billion. I think if you have £1 billion or Australian dollars, whatever, I think you just give up your right. I think you forfeit your right to take any umbrage with anything, really. If it's about your ego or you feeling sensitive about something, nobody cares. No one cares if your feelings are hurt. You have billions where your feelings used to be. $1 billion. And it's... I mean, I don't want to, rehash the same point again and again. But basically what it comes down to is this, right? If you've got $1 billion in the bank, the dynamic that is agreed upon, whether we're talking about business, billionaires like Elon Musk, it's just so unbecoming if they then get offended about ego-related... See, this is why people can't stand Elno, because he's a billionaire, right? But he gets so easily thin-skin offended when people take the piss out of him and they say, oh, he can't dance. He's not funny. He's trying to be funny. Oh, he's a blah, blah, he's a bit cringe. All of that. Then he starts kicking back on it or blocking people, killing their Twitter accounts because he can't take the criticism. But he's a billionaire. He's forfeited his right to do that. The same with Zuckerberg. Except Zuckerberg is a little bit better at, taking it on the chin. And it's the same with this lady. There's a limit to my sympathy here. The dynamic that we've all agreed upon is you can have your billions. You can have them. You've won. Just take your winnings. But the transactional agreement that we have all signed up to, socially, politically, is that you get to rule us, whether this is an Elon Musk, governing Twitter, or the Tories, or lords, or earls, or, whoever the case may be, you get to rule us. You get to write the rules, right? But in exchange for that, we get to take the piss out of you. That's the dynamic. It works through business and politics and satire. But the second that you start trying to scratch away at that, like, oh, I don't really like it when they take the piss out of my dancing. Oh, will you shut up? That's where you completely lose the public. Anyway, let's get into this. Gina Rinehart portrait. Gallery faces growing pressure to remove unflattering painting of billionaire. Do we think she's a nice billionaire? Do you reckon? Should we? I mean, I'm going to feel really bad now if she's actually quite nice. She's done loads of philanthropic work, and she's championing good causes, trying to improve social mobility, and then here I am talking shit about her. Actually, Aid, she's one of the nice billionaires. Okay, she rescued 100 women from kidnap and torture, took them to Australia and gave them all an ice cream. And look at you, you mean-spirited cunt. Anyway, let's get into it. Let's have a look, shall we? Before I talk shit about her anymore. And then, she'll come to my funeral and roast me. Okay, so it says, an Australian art gallery is facing growing pressure to remove a controversial portrait, with some of the country's elite swimmers unexpectedly getting involved in a row. Vincent Namatjira's painting of billionaire Gina Rinehart is currently on display at the National Gallery of Australia in Canberra as part of a satirical collection of portraits by the Indigenous artist titled Australia in Colour. Interesting. With its double chin and unusual expression, the painting portrays Australia's richest woman in what some might say is an unflattering light. Okay, so she's the richest woman in Australia, and this is by an Indigenous, I assume therefore Aborigine artist, and this individual has painted her in what appears to be a deliberately unflattering light, is the story so far. Mrs. Rinehart has paid more than $40 million in sponsorship to Swimming Queensland, and her company has a support scheme which helps pay their wages, according to the Sydney Morning Herald. Chalmers told the paper how discussion about the portrait dominated behind the scenes at Australia's national championships last month. See, this is what I mean. Like, you can be the richest woman in Australia. You can have your billions in the bank. You can support good causes. But this is like, it's a bit Susan Hall, isn't it? You know? I know Susan Hall's a politician, and this lady is, I assume, a very rich and successful businesswoman. But it's like when Susan Hall was pictured on the front page of the Standard, and she tried to get the photograph taken off, or she tried to get an apology from the Evening Standard. And it's a bit like, why are you wasting your time on this? Don't you have more important issues to be broaching? Isn't there something more urgent for the richest woman in Australia to be worrying about than a painting in a portrait gallery in Canberra? Not even in Sydney! Who the fuck goes to Canberra? Nobody! It's the capital of Australia, and yet it isn't. Like, oh no, oh Christ. Oh my God, Eight, what's wrong? Well, there's a terrible photo of me. Like, the lighting's all wrong. It's from a very unflattering angle. My teeth look like two big bunny things, and the rest of my teeth, it look like a haunted graveyard, and my ears are sticking out either side. I look just goofy and horrible. Oh, jeez. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Where is it? Is it like up on a billboard or something? No. It's sealed in a suitcase on a obscure Scottish island. Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, do you know what I would do if I was you? I would rant and rave about it behind the scenes at public engagements where you are a person of focus. And I would just Barbara Streisand that motherfucker. I would just try to accidentally draw as much attention to it as possible. You moron! Oh, God. Anyway, there's a quote in here, actually, I think is quite interesting. Because I think it's sort of, it's everything that's wrong with capitalism and accountability, right? And it's true of Australia, seemingly, but it's also true of the United Kingdom, I think. It says, this is a guy defending this billionaire, right? It says, I think she just deserves to be praised and looked upon definitely a lot better than what the portraits have made her out to be. Without her sponsorship, we would actually have nothing. Which, I mean, obviously, I don't need to tell you guys now, do I? Like, what the problem is with that. But basically, she could be anybody. She could be any billionaire who's made money out of any number of horrible industries. You know, dogfighting, shipping OxyContin that you know is destined for the black market. What else? You take your pick. Anything. Human hair that's been grown on children in the Far East that then gets shaved off and sold to glamour models in the West. Horrible industries. Oil and gas, fracking, earth-murdering companies and corporations. But as long as she donates, what, 3 million a year? 10 million? Probably tax deductible as well. As long as she donates that money to that swim team, or that darts team, or that dressage stable place, or whatever, she's always going to have largely popular sporting figures out front and centre saying, oh, well, I don't think she deserves, I think she deserves to be praised. Without her, we would actually have nothing. I guess that might be true. That probably is true. But two things can be concurrently true. I know that is absolutely mind-blowing to some of you. It could be true that you could have nothing without her and that she's donated money to a good cause that helps with the Australian swimming team or whatever. That could be true. But also, she could have been involved in some dodgy shit that this guy, this Indigenous artist, has a right to feel peeved about. Horrible people can also do broadly good things. Ted Bundy probably held open doors for women. Probably more willingly than every other man on his street or in his town. Like, yeah, you should get in. Like, he did superficially nice things, Ted Bundy. Doesn't mean that he was broadly a nice person. Harold Shipman probably gave money to good... Harold Shipman was a doctor! Harold Shipman did nice things. Here's a disturbing thought for you. If Harold Shipman had still been alive in 2020, you would have clapped for him! Because he was so good! Without Harold on our street, we would have actually had nothing. We would have had no GPs calling on anyone. Right, but he was a murdering sociopath. Right, but I don't think he deserves to be portrayed the way... Do you see how ridiculous it sounds? Bad people can do good things. I promise you. Kurt Cobain recorded one of the great rock albums of the early 1990s, Nevermind, which completely altered the landscape of rock music in America, in the UK, in Europe. Incredible musician, writer, artist, seemingly, superficially, a good guy, and yet admitted in his journals that he probably molested a girl with learning difficulties. So I'm just saying, good people sometimes do bad things, is all I'm saying. Lawrence Fox, incredible actor, unparalleled, some really moving performances. And yet, in spite of his selfless political activism, his commitment to free speech, it would appear that he's got mixed up with the wrong crowd or something, and for one reason or another, maybe somebody's caught the wrong end of the stick or something, or it was somebody else and now he's taking the blame for it, because he's so selfless. But it would appear that he somehow got mixed up with people that put big boxes over ULEZ cameras and vandalised them. And I don't know. It's difficult to imagine that somebody that good and selfless would allow himself to be mixed up with people who would do that sort of thing. But as I say, good people can sometimes do bad things. What do you guys think of this? Do you think Gina Rinehart, do you think billionaires in general have a right to take issue with how they're portrayed? Is this a sort of feminist, like misogynist type thing where we have to go, look, me as a man, I don't know how it feels to be judged so unrelentingly and fiercely and ferociously on my appearance. I just don't know how that feels. Like, me and my girlfriend were looking at TikTok the other day, and there was a girl on there, she's like 20, 21, and she's just dancing. That's all she's doing. She's having a good time. She wants to dance. She loves music. She loves dancing, and that's what she's doing. Nothing about politics, nothing about feminism, nothing about men or women or anything. And yet, we tapped on her comment section just out of curiosity to see what a bin fire it might be for just something as innocent as that. Somebody's daughter, all she's doing is dancing, and comment after comment after comment were just angry men with cartoon avatars calling her fat, clumsy, tubby. And I was saying to my missus, I was like, it's such a different world for men and women. Like, it's disgusting. It really is. Like, and I was saying, just for contrast, I was like, I don't think I'm a particularly attractive guy. I just don't. Maybe it's self-confidence. Maybe some of you think I'm endlessly fuckable. But I live in the real world most of the time. And I don't think I'm a particularly attractive guy. And on top of that, I think, I've got fucked up teeth. I've got ears that stick out. I look like somebody's bad drawing of a drunk leprechaun most of the time, right? And I dress like I've got severe arrested development. There's a reason that all of my pop culture references exist in the early and mid-90s. It's because I've never mentally left that time. But my point is, I look a certain way. And I would imagine that the way that I look would be ripe for abuse if I was being judged by the same terms as women. And yet I can count on my right hand the amount of times that people have stumbled into my comment section and immediately attacked the way that I look. It just doesn't happen. People see that I'm a guy, they hear what I'm saying, they might call me a lefty or a twat or something, but they never attack me on my appearance. Very, very rarely. And yet, here's this girl, all she's doing is dancing. That's somebody's daughter that's just dancing, and just this litany, just this bin fire of awfulness, violent, misogynist language. And I suppose my point that I'm, eventually coming to here is that, maybe is there a piece in this around, I just don't know what it feels like to be a woman in the public eye, certainly, who is judged on her appearance, or perhaps always has been judged on her appearance. And then, to add to all of that, then this portrait comes out that appears to be deliberately actually quite vicious. Maybe I just don't know how that feels. But while we're on the subject of not knowing how another person or other people feel, maybe, in the loose amount of prep that I've done for this, maybe it's not beyond Gina Rinehart's abilities to consider how this Aboriginal fella might feel about her father. Because I was just looking this up now. Her father was an iron magnate, right? She's the beneficiary. She's the Nepo baby that I was referring to at the beginning. She's a beneficiary of privilege. She's inherited this fortune from her father. And her father spoke about Aboriginal people like this. Check this out. So his name was Lang Hancock. And he was Gina Rinehart's father. And he said this. He said, mining in Australia occupies less than 1/5 of 1% of the total surface of our continent. And yet it supports 14 million people. Nothing should therefore be sacred from mining, whether it's your ground, my ground, the black fellow's ground, or anybody else's. So the question of Aboriginal land rights and things of this nature shouldn't exist. Basically, it's him saying, I don't care if you live there, or if your ancestors lived there, or if we invaded you 100 years earlier. Get the fuck off the land. I'm building an iron mine. And, unsurprisingly, it says that he had very conservative views. He married a young Filipino, which his daughter was vociferously opposed to. She did not like that at all. And anyway, suddenly then it all becomes clear, doesn't it? Suddenly quotes like this at the bottom of that news story start to make a bit more sense. The artist, he says, he addressed the furore, saying, people don't have to like my paintings, but I hope that they take the time to look at them and think, why has this Aboriginal bloke painted these powerful people? What is he trying to say? Which I think is perfect. This is a sort of generations deep snark, award-winning snark that I am here for. I just coast along on sort of news stories and developments and stuff where somebody says something silly, and then through the means of satire, I then clap back on it, try to throw some wit at it, try to make you laugh a little bit. But it's clear to me now, I've been doing this all wrong. This guy is the gold standard. He's waited generations. And then finally, he's become a celebrated artist, and he's painted the guy's daughter in an unflattering way. Hung it up there. There you go, bitch. Yeah. You enjoy your winnings, but we get to take the piss out of you. That's the deal. Guys, I gotta go. Thank you so much for continuing to tune into these. If you're enjoying the podcast, I put one out usually every Tuesday/Wednesday to Patreons and YouTube community backers first. Then I do the Friday night live show. Every Friday, 7:30, we have a live chat. The live stream is a good time. Join us for that. I also put out alternative paper reviews every morning, or most mornings. where I go through some of the right-wing rags and rip and roast them. If you're enjoying all of this stuff, do consider jumping on to the Patreon or the YouTube community. I've got links to both in the description below. We're doing an in-person meetup on Saturday the 6th of July in London. So if you want to come down, meet me, hang out, we'll have a few beers, we'll put the world to rights over its many, many wrongs, etc., etc. If you want to do that, if you want to get involved, join the Discord chat, get the episodes of the podcast 2 days before everyone else, now's a good time. Just jump on there. You can start, I think it's £3 a month it starts from, which is fucking, what even is £3 a month? Jump aboard. That's it for now. I've got to go. Take care of yourselves. Keep it booge. Keep it binfluencer. And I am out this motherfucker.